Hello and welcome to the course. My name is Mike and I am a linguist. I teach English to adults, but I also teach French and Spanish, and I love learning languages. I learn Polish and a little bit of Arabic at the moment. So this course is going to focus on your listening skills and take them to the next level. You'll hear why I think that listening is a really important part of learning English and why we don't always give ourselves the best chance of improving this skill. But it will also help you in your speaking, as you will imitate what you hear and you will use it in your spoken English. It will help you at work if you're struggling to keep up with the conversations. And it will help you in your understanding of British English when it comes to movies, music, podcasts, or whatever you listen to in British English, really. I will try to answer 3 questions in this course. The first, why is listening so important? The second, why we find this skill difficult? And the third, how can we get better at it? In answering the second and the third part of these questions, I'm going to give you the chance to practice some of the points that I cover. So, as well as listening to me, you're going to hear recordings of spoken English and you're going to do exercises in each section of the course. Also, you'll get the chance to read PDFs of the main points that I cover. So, if you don't understand something, no problem, you can look at the PDF and see the written version of what I'm saying. Now, I'll be speaking in British English. That's because I am British. But bear in mind there are other courses on platforms like Udemy which have different kinds of English. American, Australian, Canadian, and lots of other kinds. You can use this course starting from the beginning and working to the end in each section. Or you can choose a section which interests you, do the section, come back and do another section. But I want you to think of this course as a bit like a language gym. You go to the gym to get stronger and fitter. In the same way as you do this course, if you want to get your language muscles stronger, it's really important that you do this regularly and repeatedly. So you can do a section one day, leave it for a few days or weeks, come back to it and do it again. So think of this as a language gym, this course. Finally, I want you to know that this is not rocket science. You will improve your listening, and I am here to support you in this course. So if you have any questions, leave a comment in the comments section and I will respond. Likewise, if you see other comments from other users and you think you can help them, please respond, as we want to build a community of language learners. Finally, if you liked the course, you found it useful, helpful, valuable, please do leave a review as it helps other people find the course. So if you're ready, let's go to lesson number 1. There are 4 main skills or components in language. There's reading, writing, speaking, and listening. 2 of these are input, that's listening and reading, and 2 are output, that's coming from us out into the world, speaking and writing. Which of these skills do you think we use most when we communicate? I'm guessing you might say speaking, right? Wrong. According to this well-known study, we humans spend 70% of our waking hours communicating. And of that 70%, we spend 45% of the time listening to others, which makes listening the most important skill of the language. Additionally, in a conversation, while you can control what you say, you have no control over what the other person is saying to you. So to have any meaningful conversation, you need to understand what they're saying. So listening becomes a vital part of the mix. But how much time do you think we spend working on average on improving our listening skills? Maybe it would surprise you to discover that while we spend 12 years learning to write in a language, and that's closely followed by 6 to 8 years learning to read, we only spend up from an average of 0 to 3 years learning to speak and improve our listening skills, which means that we need to work and focus on our listening skills a lot more. Traditionally, classrooms have been more focused on grammar, writing and reading. And while these skills are important, my aim in this course is to shift the focus towards listening. So when do we use listening in everyday life? We listen to people when we're having a conversation with them. We listen to music, films, podcasts, yeah? And we listen to teachers in schools. We listen to teachers at universities. But I want to show you that also, as well as this, listening can help your speaking. And if you improve your listening skills, you will become a better speaker too. You'll be able to take part in more conversations. You'll be able to connect with people a lot better if you have better listening skills. It might also surprise you to know that native speakers also find listening hard. Take the following situation. If you're on the phone to a call center and the person on the other end of the phone has a very strong accent or is speaking very quickly, or maybe the signal is not very good, native speakers also find this difficult. So another situation might be when you're in a railway station or an airport and you're listening to the public announcement system and there's lots of background noise. Native speakers find this also really difficult to understand. So it's really important that you understand that you're not the only people who find listening to English difficult. The question then is, how can we get better at it? So it's really important to know that listening is a skill that you can acquire. You can get better at it just like any other human skill. You learn how to drive a car, you learn how to dance, you learn how to cook. Same way as learning to listen better is something that through practice you can get better at. Listening also is going to become more important as we become more digital. We become more, the internet is filled with listening now. If you look on social media, TikTok videos, Instagram, you know all of this. But it's worth bearing this in mind that listening is now going to be probably the most important skill that you can get better at. Think of the amount of times you send audio messages or listen to audio messages from your friends, or you listen to movies or podcasts or Netflix or any of the platforms that show English-speaking language material. So listening is going to become more and more important, and that's what we need to focus on. It's helpful to think of there being two different types of listening. There's the listening to understand general meaning of something that's said, and we can also call this extensive or passive listening. And this is the listening that's used in everyday conversation. You try to follow what a speaker is saying to you, and you're trying to understand what they're meaning. It's also the type of listening that's used in the classroom. So your teacher will play you a clip, a short passage of listening from audio or from video, and you, or you're the learner, have to decide what is being said. So, what did John say? Did he say this or did he say that? Okay, so this is all the type 1 listening, which is listening for general meaning. Now, this is all good to test your vocabulary and your understanding of English, but it doesn't really train your ear to understand how spoken English works. So for this, you're going to need a different type of listening. And we can call this listening active listening or intensive listening. Learning how sounds change when they're used in spoken English will help you understand native speakers better, but it will also help you when you speak English. Because sounds change, sounds get reduced, they link together, they sometimes disappear completely. Let's look at some examples. Salt and pepper. 3 words. In spoken English, you'll hear something like salt and pepper. Can you hear how the and has been squashed into a n sound? Salt and pepper. It also happens at the individual word level. So an example, comfortable. Comfortable. This is a 4-syllable word when it's written down. Come-for-ta-bull. In spoken English, that gets reduced to 3 syllables. Comfortable. Can you see how the O and the R sound has been removed? Comfortable. Are you comfortable? It also happens at the sentence level or question level. So, what do you want to do becomes, what do you want to do when you hear it in spoken English? What do you? Can you hear? What do you want to do? It's this second type of listening that requires a different kind of listening. It's an active listening or a language detective listening, if you like. This is different from passive listening, where you have English on in the background, maybe you're watching a movie, but your attention is divided. But before we look into more detail in this active listening type, it's important to know that you can improve your general listening by the situation. Knowing what the context of the situation you're in helps you understand what's being said. So if you are in a shop, for example, and you are paying for something, it's likely that the person who's talking to you is talking about the stuff that you bought. You're at the shop, you're at the supermarket and you're paying for something. You know what's being said is going to be about money or it's going to be about what you've just bought. So the context is really helpful as well to help you understand the meaning of what's being said. But in this course, our focus is on this active listening, this really micro listening, which will help you improve your understanding of native speakers. Do you ever get the feeling that it's just me who finds something difficult? Everyone else gets it, but I'm really finding something hard. I think we all experience this when listening to a foreign language, and there are reasons for this. First, we have no control on how quickly the speaker is talking. If you've ever been to a foreign country for the first time, or watched a movie without subtitles, or been in a group of native speakers and trying to understand what they're saying, you'll know this feeling of speech just happening really too fast for our brains to handle. The second reason is that listening, unlike reading, you cannot have words repeated. I mean, you can ask your speaker to repeat themselves. Excuse me, sorry, I didn't catch that. I didn't understand that. Can you repeat that? And they will repeat that often if they're nice. But this gets a bit tiring. So unlike in reading, where you can go back, you didn't understand a word, you go back to the beginning of the sentence and you reread the word. In listening, the word comes into our ears and out again. The conversation has moved on. So the speed at which people talk and the fact you can't have them repeated are 2 major problems. The third reason is that words blend together in spoken language so that it's different from the way we see them written down. Now, it's this third point that we're going to spend some more time in closer detail in the next video. Also worth mentioning is that listening to classroom materials or your teacher is going to be very different from listening to native speakers when they talk. This is because your teacher or your course book will speak to you in a very slow, articulated way. So you kind of get used to this way of speaking, and then it comes as a shock or as a surprise when you hear English spoken differently. But it's not a reason to give up. You just need to take some time to practice and to get used to the way that native speakers are talking. So speed is one reason why understanding native speakers is difficult. Another reason is accent. In England alone, there are 40 different accents. And some of the main ones you'll find are received pronunciation, often called RP. And this is actually only spoken by 2 or 3% of the population max. You'll hear it spoken by BBC newsreaders. You'll hear it spoken by some teachers. The Queen definitely speaks received pronunciation. So it's a language of power, actually. The accent, sorry, not the language. Received pronunciation is an accent, but it's a very powerful accent used by, as I said, newsreaders, academics, politicians, that kind of thing. But other accents include Scottish accent. If you go to cities like Glasgow, Edinburgh, you're going to hear a completely different accent. You've got Geordie, the accent from Newcastle. Liverpudlian accent, often called Scouse. You've got the accent of Yorkshire from cities like Sheffield or Leeds. That's a very different accent altogether. So accent is another reason you're going to find native speakers difficult to understand, because in England we speak with lots and lots of different accents. Native speakers also reduce words. They link words together. So often in speech you think they're mumbling. You hear just one sound. And this is where we're going to spend some more time. It's especially difficult if you've learned English through reading and writing. This third part, this linking words together, is going to be problematic for you. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of theory at this point, just a little bit, okay? There's an academic and British linguist called Richard Caldwell who has studied the way we speak in British English. And he has observed 3 different types of speech. First, the greenhouse kind of speech, which is the written words, or the way that English is written. Let's take the sentence, "What do you want to learn from this course?" Each word in this kind of greenhouse English is pronounced and articulated very carefully. What do you want to learn from this course? Now, nobody speaks like that, obviously. Okay, you'd sound like Siri or like a robot. Nobody speaks like this. In spoken English, you're going to hear sometimes what we can call the garden variety of speech, or what Richard Caldwell describes as the garden. This is where linking words happen and reductions in speech happen. So what do you want becomes what do you want? What do you want? So the D and the Y get smudged together, they become friends. What do you want? The T is dropped, in fact, in this one. So you get, what do you want to learn? What do you want to learn? But it's the third part, the third form of speech called the jungle, all right, where it's crazy, it's chaos. This is where real everyday spoken English happens. So instead of a nice sort of reduction where you get, what do you want to learn from this course? In everyday spoken English, you'll hear something like, what do you want to learn from this course? What do you want to learn? So here, everything is contracted or reduced to one sound. What do you want to learn? Maybe 2 sounds. What do you is what do you? What do you want to learn from this course? And this is where we want to spend more time in understanding the jungle of everyday, chaotic, messy speech. In my experience, learners often don't realize that we have these features of connected everyday speech. And there's also these things like fillers that we use all of the time. Words like I mean or I reckon. So for example, yeah, like, I don't know, I reckon it might be around about 6 o'clock. What time are we meeting tonight? So I reckon maybe 6 o'clock, I reckon. Yeah, I reckon is really just saying I think. Okay, but you'll hear these kind of filler words all of the time in spoken English. Words like is a good one. Like we use obviously to compare two things. Okay, an orange is like an apple. They're both fruits. But we also use it just to compare, to buy ourselves time, in fact. So we say, yeah, like, I don't know, I met this person and he was like 13, 14. So actually we're saying there, we're using it as approximately, like meaning approximately. But we also repeat ourselves a lot in spoken English. We repeat ourselves, or we have what we call false starts, meaning that we start to talk about something and then we change our minds. Okay? So we might begin a sentence by saying, you know, you really need to watch that film. Oh, what was the film called again? It was this film, with James McAvoy in. But yeah, you really need to watch that film because that film is just so good. You see, so I repeat myself, but I go off in a different direction just for a minute or a few seconds. And this again is problematic. This is where you will find it difficult to follow the conversation. But just by being aware of these things will help you. So become aware that native speakers, when they talk, they use repetition. They use words like filler words that don't really mean much. They use hesitation, like, yeah, so like, Okay, this is going on in spoken English all of the time. Now in the next video, we're going to look at we're going to do some practice of how sounds behave when they're next to each other. So if you're ready for some practice, let's get going to the next video. In this video, I'm going to show you how English is really spoken. If you think of grammar as being the key to writing skills in English, confidence being the key to speaking, knowing how sounds behave when they're next to each other and how they change when they're in words is the key to your listening skills. You see, in spoken English, we don't always pronounce all the sounds that you see written. We take shortcuts, we go quicker, and so when we talk, we make sounds disappear, in fact, which can be surprising for you because you have a visual filter of the words in your head. So you see the written language, but that is very different from the way that they're spoken. Let's look at some examples now. Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, sorry to interrupt. This is how you would hear it as it's written. But if you hear it as it's spoken, listen to this.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. Excuse me, sorry to interrupt.
Do you notice what's happened? The first two letters, EX, have been removed. They've been deleted. So what you hear is a replacement with the letter S. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Let's take another example. Shall we go? Shall we go? Okay, written as 3 separate words. Now take a listen to how it's said in spoken English.
Should we go outside? Should we go outside?
Do you see what's happened here? Shall we has been squashed into shwi. Shwi. It's a different sound. The LL has been squashed into shwi. Even whole words disappear, like that's fine becomes it's fine. It's fine. Or what do you mean becomes what do you mean? What do you mean? So we drop vowels, consonants, even whole words. How can you hope to understand native speakers? Well, just by being aware of it, knowing that this happens is going to help you follow conversations more easily. See, the more you become aware of something, the easier it becomes. Let's look at some more examples now of where this happens. If you take any word that ends with a D and begins with a consonant, you're also going to find elision. This is the grammar term for this sounds disappearing, elision. For example, I found my phone. It's difficult to pronounce the N and the D sound. So often we just drop the D and we hear found. I found my phone. I found my phone. Another common consonant that gets dropped is the T at the end of words. So my best friend becomes my best friend. My best friend. Text message becomes text message. The T sound just gets dropped in spoken English. Now you've heard these examples, let's try this exercise to identify the sounds that disappear. So I'm going to say each word 3 times, once at normal speed, the second time a little bit slower, and then at normal speed again. And I want you to write down the words that you hear. The numbers of words that you'll hear is shown on the screen for each example. Okay, are you ready? Next door. Next door. Next door. First floor. First floor. First floor. West Coast. West Coast. West Coast. We asked Dad. We asked Dad. We asked Dad. She felt good. She felt good. She felt good. The World Cup. The World Cup. The World Cup. It must be true. It must be true. It must be true. It's kind of like It's kind of like I left the office early. I left the office early. I left the office early. So here are the answers. Check your answers now and see if there is any difference between what you heard and what I actually said. You probably found that quite easy. Let's try a harder more challenging exercise. Same thing, listen to the dialogue and write down what you hear.
Why don't we all share a recipe in the next lesson? Why don't we all share a recipe in the next lesson? Why don't we all share a recipe in the next lesson?
My mum and dad left there in 2006, 2007. My mum and dad left there in 2006, 2007. My mum and dad left there in 2006, 2007.
And I graduated and I couldn't even have a kind of easy conversation. And I graduated and I couldn't even have a kind of easy conversation. And I graduated and I couldn't even have a kind of easy conversation.
The last time I went to a pub was last Thursday in London. The last time I went to a pub was last Thursday in London. The last time I went to a pub was last Thursday in London.
Okay, so maybe that was a bit more challenging, I'm guessing. Let's have a look at the answers to this one.
Why don't we all share a recipe in the next lesson? Why don't we all share a recipe in the next lesson? Why don't we all share a recipe in the next lesson?
My mum and dad left there in 2006, 2007. My mum and dad left there in 2006, 2007.
And I graduated and I couldn't even have a kind of easy conversation. And I graduated and I couldn't even have a kind of easy conversation.
The last time I went to a pub was last Thursday in London. The last time I went to a pub was last Thursday in London.
So recognizing that sounds disappear in spoken English can also, as well as helping you with your listening, can also help you with your spoken English. Because if you know that that's what's happening, you copy it. You also reduce your sounds. Yeah, you reduce your sentences, so you say things in a much shorter way. So instead of saying, hey, what do you want to do this evening, sounding a bit like robotic, you can just say, what do you wanna do this evening? Try it out loud. Say, what do you wanna? Instead of what do you want to, what do you wanna? Okay, now we've looked at sounds disappearing. Now let's look at the next chapter, which is word stress. Speaking is different from writing because we can add meaning with our voice. And we can do this in various ways. But one way is sentence stress and putting our stress on certain words in the sentence. Now, by stress, I don't mean your anxiety or your worry. I mean your emphasis, where you put your emphasis in a sentence. Let's look at an example. What would you like to do tonight? What would you like to do tonight? The emphasis that I'm giving with my voice is on the word do here. It's the idea that I'm asking somebody, what activity do they want to do tonight? Do you want to go to watch the cinema? Do you want to go and play football? What do you want to do tonight? Now, if I change the emphasis with my voice to a different word in that sentence, the meaning changes. Take a listen to this. What would you like to do tonight? What would you like to do tonight? Now, by shifting my emphasis in my voice to the pronoun you, away from the do, I'm now asking or changing the meaning so that it's, hey, I'm not interested in John, what John wants. I'm interested in what you want, Marta. Yeah, what do you want to do? Likewise, if I change the sentence, the emphasis rather, to a different word in the sentence, have a listen to this. What would you like to do tonight? Just say that out loud to yourself. What would you like to do tonight? Now the implicit meaning is on the word like. The shift in meaning is now to, I'm not interested in what you think I want to hear. What do you want to do? I want to know what you feel like doing. Okay, so what would you like to do tonight? Now the meaning is on the word like. Maybe you don't always tell me how you feel, but I want you to tonight. I want you to tell me what you like to do. So, by shifting, by emphasizing the certain words, by stressing certain words in the sentence, we can change completely the meaning of the sentence. As a general rule, we stress certain words in a sentence, and these are called content words. Verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, they get stressed more than function words, prepositions, conjunctions, etc. So take a listen to this sentence. I'd like to get a ticket to London. I'd like to get a ticket to London. Which words are stressed in that sentence? I stressed like, ticket, and London. So those are the content words of that sentence. And here's a tip. If you can concentrate on what those content words are in a sentence, the rest of the sentence doesn't matter so much. So listen out for those content words. Listen out for the verbs, the adjectives, and the adverbs. And the rest of the sentence usually doesn't mean so much. Let's do some practice. You're going to hear 9 sentences said out loud, and I want you to write down where you think the emphasis is in each sentence. So if you can, go and print off the PDF which comes with this section, and go and grab a pen and just mark in each sentence where you think the emphasis is. He lives quite near me. He lives quite near me. What are you doing and where are you spending Christmas this year? What are you doing and where are you spending Christmas this year? That's a bit difficult to predict. That's a bit difficult to predict. I'm probably staying at home and locking the front door. I'm probably staying at home and locking the front door. Definitely not working. Definitely not working. You sound very certain of that. You sound very certain of that. I don't know, just following the news at the moment. I don't know, just following the news at the moment. So they will be able to live more comfortably. So they will be able to live more comfortably. I will not be on a rocket. I will not be on a rocket. All right, before I reveal the answers to where the stress lies, I want you to know that this comes from a conversation. These sentences come from a wider conversation, which is recorded on my podcast called The English Waffle. And you can listen to the whole of this conversation if you want to. You can listen to that before you go to the next section. But if you want to skip it, you can skip it. Okay? So here are the answers. Here is where the stress lies in each of these sentences. Have a look and compare that with what you heard. He lives quite near me. What are you doing and where are you spending Christmas this year? That's a bit difficult to predict. I'm probably staying at home and locking the front door. Definitely not working. You sound very certain of that. I don't know, just following the news at the moment. So they will be able to live more comfortably. I will not be on a rocket. So we've looked at how the way we say things can change the meaning in a sentence. Totally changes the meaning, the way you say it. So now we've done that, now let's look at the next chapter. Just as we can change the meaning of words with our voice at a sentence level, we can also do the same at an individual word level. So just by changing the stress on a specific word can alter its meaning completely. Let's look at an example of this. When you change the emphasis, when you put the emphasis rather on the first syllable, the word is record. Okay, and a record is either a song, okay, a record is another name for a song, or in fact it's the vinyl, the material which the song is recorded on, or a third meaning of that is that you keep a record of something. Okay, you have a meeting and you write down what was said in the meeting, that's a record. But if you shift the focus, the emphasis of your voice towards the second syllable, you get the verb, okay? I'm going to record, right? So from record to record, different meanings. The first one is a noun, second one is a verb. So record and record, okay? This is used as a verb, obviously. We talk about, I'm going to miss the program tonight on TV, but I can record it. Okay, so I can watch it later, I can record it. Let's have a look at some more examples. Suspect and suspect. Suspect, suspect. The second of these is the verb, which means that you believe something to be true, but you don't have any proof. Okay, so I suspect my son is playing PlayStation because that's what he does all of the time, but I don't know if it's true, but I suspect. But used as a noun, what can we say? We can say the police have a suspect. Okay, they have a suspect in mind, which is the person. Okay, we don't know who it is, but they have a suspect. Insult and insult. The first of these is the noun, insult. So if, for example, I say to my friend, why do you always wear these same horrible t-shirts? They're always the same. That's an insult. Okay, I'm saying something that's offensive to him, even though we're joking. Okay, so in this case, it's a friendly insult. But the verb is the action of giving the insult. Okay, you insult somebody. So the stress there is on the second syllable. Let's look at another example. Import and import. We talk about imports and exports. Stuff coming into the country is an import, and stuff going out of the country is an export. But if you use it as a verb, you're talking about the most common usage would be for computers. So you say, I'm going to import something onto my computer, meaning you're going to bring it into your computer from somewhere else. Okay, import and export. Conflict and conflict. Just one syllable stress and you've got a totally different meaning. The noun, conflict, is an argument, okay, a dispute, a difference of opinion is a conflict. In fact, it's more than a difference of opinion, it's an argument. Okay, it can be violent as well. Okay, we talk about violent conflict in some parts of the world, sadly. But to conflict with someone or something is the action. Okay, so I might say, this argument conflicts with the other argument. They're not the same. Okay, they conflict. Your version of events conflicts with what John told me. Okay, there's some sort of disagreement there. And the last example is permit. Permit used as a noun, and permit. Permit and permit. Permit we would use as meaning like a license to do something. So we talk about a permit to park somewhere, or have you got a permit to travel? Okay, and then the action, it means you allow someone to do something. Okay, if you permit someone to do something, you let them do it, you allow them to do it. So you can see here that just by stressing a different part of the word, putting emphasis in your voice, changes the meanings from nouns to verbs. These ones have a connection in their meaning. So there's not that much difference between the noun and the verb in terms of meaning, but sometimes we can change the meaning completely by the stress that we put in our voice. Let's look at these examples. Invalid. Invalid means somebody who is physically disabled. Okay, basically, we now use the word disabled much more than invalid, but you will hear it or you'll read it. So it's out there. So invalid. And then the second one is invalid. All right? It means completely different. If something is invalid, it means it's wrong or it's incorrect. Okay? So you get an invalid passport. It means that your passport is not correct. There's something wrong with it. Or an invalid file. Let's look at the next one. Content and content. Okay, content. We talk about content of what is inside something is the content of it. Okay, so you get the content of a website. Typical example, the website content. But content, where the stress is on the second syllable, means you're happy. All right? If all is well with the world, you feel healthy, you've got your loved ones around you, the sun is shining, means you're content. Let's look at another example. Entrance and entrance. The entrance to the hotel, okay, the opening of the hotel is the obvious one. Maybe the verb is new to you. To entrance or to be entranced by something is more common, means to be captivated or to be amazed by something in such a way that you... the best way to describe it is a piece of music can be entrancing. You know, I was entranced by the music. It takes you places. Okay, it's a powerful bit of music or theatre or film or whatever. Refuse and refuse, very different meanings. Refuse is another word for rubbish, okay? And refuse is you deny someone something, okay? Refuse, refuse. Object, we all know what an object is, a thing, okay? Anything that's not a person is an object. But to object to something, used as a verb, it means you don't agree with something and you vocalize that disagreement. You say something about it. I object. I don't agree with that point of view. I object. Okay? Very, very well-known one in all the English textbooks. The next one is desert, which is the sandy place, the Sahara Desert, okay? Place where you don't want to be without much water. And then dessert, for those of you who've got a sweet tooth and you like your desserts, you like your ice creams, dessert, desert. Okay, listen again, desert, dessert. And the final one we've got here is console and console. The console used as a noun, talking about PlayStation console, for example. And console means to offer words of sympathy for someone who's going through a hard time. Okay, if you put your friend is sad, okay, and you console them, you offer them your emotional support, your words of sympathy. Okay, so we all need to give each other consoling words from time to time. So you can see here that just by changing the emphasis with your voice on the word itself can change the meaning of the word. Sometimes when we get the stress wrong, the meaning of the word becomes unintelligible. So a student recently asked me if I'd seen a film about surveillance. He said, "Mike, have you seen that film about the surveillance cameras?" I said, "Ahmed, no, I don't know what you're talking about." And then a couple of moments later, the penny dropped. He was talking about surveillance. Okay? The word on your screen now, surveillance, means the act of watching over someone. Okay, so we talk about a surveillance camera, for example, to check on criminal activity. But if you say the word in the wrong place, and the emphasis is on the wrong place, the meaning is lost. So it's really important to become familiar with the stress of English at the sentence level, but also at the word level, the individual word level. And this is how you're going to, A, understand native speakers better, but also it will help you with your own pronunciation as a speaker. Perhaps the best way to practice this word stress is to say examples of words out loud yourself, and you can see where the emphasis is. So have a look at these words and try to work out where you think the emphasis, where the stress is on the words themselves. Did you get, for the first one, personal? Or did you say personnel? Okay, they would mean different things. Personal, relating to yourself, but personnel is staff, basically. Yeah, the personnel of Apple versus he or she is a very personal person. Slightly odd example, but personal. The stress there is on the first syllable. Conversation, the second one, conversation. Where's the stress there? It's actually on the third syllable. Primary stress, conversation. And the next one, interview. Can you hear that the stress is on the first syllable? Interview. The next example is tricky for some languages. So if you're particularly a French speaker, for example, you might find this a bit more challenging. The person who takes photos is a photographer. Okay, a photographer. The stress there being in the middle of the word, photographer. Okay. Vegetable, vegetable. Not vegetable, okay? Not, any other way of pronouncing that word, vegetable. Next one, developer. The stress there is in the middle of the word. Can you hear that? Developer. Developer. And finally, comfortable. Stress there, primary stress is at the beginning of the word, comfortable. So sometimes we get this stress wrong and it can be kind of misleading or sometimes funny. So for example, if you write material for a website, your job is a content creator. But if you say I'm a content creator, what you're saying is you're a happy creator, which may be true as well. Maybe you are a I'm confused now. Maybe you're a content creator. Who knows? So that's word stress, guys. Where you put the stress on the word can make a difference to the meaning of the words, not just at the sentence level, but also at the individual words. If you're ready, let's go to the next section, which is chunking. Think of some of the first English words that you learned. I'd take a bet that it was words like, nice to meet you. How's it going? Good, thanks. My name is. These short units of language are called chunks. And they're learned before you learn grammar and before you learn what every word means. So even my name is, you don't learn that as 3 individual words. You learn it as a unit of language. So because in reality, native speakers, when they talk, we're thinking in units of language. We're thinking in these chunks of language. So they're, if you like, ready-made phrases. And these chunks or small units of language are one way to really improve your listening. Because if you can identify and recognize them in everyday speech and use them in your own speech, copy them, then you're going to understand native speakers a lot better. So things that we say all the time and are actually grammar structures themselves are also chunks. Take a look at these. I'd like to. I'd like to. I'd like to travel more. I'd like to travel more. Yeah, I would like to comes into a small little chunk. I'd like to. I should have. I should have. I should have called my mum last night, but I forgot. I should have. I would have. Okay, I would have gets, it's a chunk of language. I would have come to your party, but I went to John's party instead. I would have. Can you give me a hand? Yeah, can you help me? Can you? It's a unit, it's a little chunk of language. I want to. I want to, or I didn't want to. I didn't want to. So all of these are grammar terms in themselves, but they're most usefully learned as chunks of language. And that's really how you'll become familiar with them, because they are everywhere. They're all used all of the time in everyday spoken English. Because we frequently use, as native speakers, the same expressions, we're also used to hearing them a lot. And that means that we don't articulate when we say things in the same way as you would see them written down. So we can often squeeze words together so that they sound like a single word. Listen to me pronounce some of these chunks as examples. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So here you've got, do you know what I mean? As a chunk is, do you know what I mean? Often you use this at the end of a sentence, right? You're explaining something and you say, I've been to that cafe in London. It's a bit retro, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Okay, you're signalling you want agreement from your listener. Another one, a bit of, a small amount of. Okay, I need a bit of time. Okay, I don't say I need a bit of time. I sound like Siri if I say I need a bit of time. Instead, I need a bit of time. Another example, sort of, a sort of. What is I'm thinking of an example. What is bulgur wheat? Okay, bulgur wheat is a sort of crop, right? It's a sort of cereal. You might want to fact check that. What is bulgur wheat? But it's a sort of, okay? Even like I don't know is a chunk, okay? I don't know. I don't know. Or a lot of. A lot of. Now, this is one of the biggest reasons why you don't always understand native English speakers. Because, for example, if you learned the phrase written down, if I were you, okay, in a textbook or a sentence, if I were you, you'd think, yeah, okay, I've got this. I've learned a new phrase. But when it's said in spoken English, it's said in such a way that it's a chunk. It comes as one unit of sound. So it's like, if I were you, I would get a new haircut. If I were you, all right? So these small chunks of language are a really good place to start improving your kind of recognition of the way that spoken English is happening all the time. So if there's one tip I want you to take away from this section, is that if you stop thinking about spoken English as every single word, you need to start training your ear to recognize chunks or units of sound. Because when we learn these chunks of language, it's easier for our brains to process what we're listening to. Our brains are going to process groups of words instead of processing individual words one by one. Listen to these examples and guess where the chunk is. Guess which three to four words usually is a chunk. Okay? So write them down as you hear them. Here we go. I'd like to get a ticket to London. I'd like to get a ticket to London. By the way, did you speak to Juan? By the way, did you speak to Juan? I was wondering if you could give me a hand. I was wondering if you could give me a hand. I see what you mean, but I don't agree. I see what you mean, but I don't agree. It doesn't matter. I'll do it later. It doesn't matter. I'll do it later. Every now and then, I go to the gym. Every now and then, I go to the gym. Okay, so let's have a look. Hopefully you got the chunks as being the ones highlighted here. So I'd like to get a ticket to London. Yeah, that's the chunk. I'd like to. By the way, did you speak to Juan? Very common little chunk of language there, by the way. Okay, used to say when you forget or when you're reminded to say something, you jog your own memory. Okay, so you think, by the way, I forgot something. By the way, did you pick up that message? Mm-hmm. I was wondering, likewise, very, very common little three-word chunk there. I was wondering, I was thinking to myself, okay? I was wondering if. I see what you mean. I see what you mean, but I don't agree. It doesn't matter. I'll do it later. It doesn't matter. It's not important. No, it's not important. It doesn't matter. And then every now and then, you know, every once in a while, every now and then, occasionally. Okay? I go to the gym sometimes. I'm a bit lazy, so I don't go very often. Every now and then. Okay? So hopefully you're starting to understand that words are not used in isolation. Yeah, they come as part of a group of words. And being able to call on these chunks of vocabulary will also help you improve your fluency in English, as well as your understanding of native speakers. Take the word thing, for example. You may know that thing refers to a nameless object, like, give me that thing. Okay? I don't want to name the object, so I just say a thing. Give me that thing, please. However, you'll also find that word thing used in lots of ready-made expressions and phrases. Listen to these examples.
The thing is, I can't come tonight as I've made plans. The thing is, I can't come tonight as I've made plans. All sorts of things are sold in that new shop. All sorts of things are sold in that new shop. How can you say there's no such thing as aliens? How can you say there's no such thing as aliens?
So did you hear in those examples that thing is being used quite differently, in fact, in each one? So in the first one, the thing is, I can't come tonight because I've made plans, kind of means that the thing is meaning the problem is, or the issue, or the situation is that I can't come tonight. But in the second one, all sorts of things are sold in that new shop. There, things is being used to mean stuff. Okay, all sorts of things, from cheese to plastic lilos that you go out onto the sea with. Yeah? So things are used in different ways in that sentence, all sorts of things. We use that as a chunk of language. Or in the third one, how can you say there's no such thing as aliens? Okay, how can you say that they don't exist? Aliens don't exist. Do you think aliens exist? Well, that's a different story altogether. Now, listen to a bit of audio from the podcast, The English Waffle, and try to find where these chunks are. There are going to be 3 examples. So listen to where these 3 to 4 word chunks are, okay? Ready?
It's only a part-time thing, it's a couple of days. It's only a part-time thing, it's a couple of days.
And I think that's a way that a lot of adults shoot themselves in the foot. And I think that's a way that a lot of adults shoot themselves in the foot. Next weekend, I think I'm going to start kind of group lessons on Zoom. Next weekend, I think I'm going to start kind of group lessons on Zoom.
Okay, let's look at the answers. They were quite quick audios. They were taken from real conversations on the podcast, so maybe you found them quicker. Did you hear in the first one, Owen says, a couple of days, talking about his wife, Sandra, has got a job, and he says, it's only a part-time thing, it's a couple of days, 1 or 2 days a week, okay? It's a couple of days. So in the second one, Desta says, I think that's a way that a lot of adults shoot themselves in the foot. You've got a nice idiom there, shoot them. If you shoot yourself in the foot, it means you make a situation worse for yourself. Okay, you shoot yourself in the foot. But the chunk there is a lot of. Okay, she says, I think that's a way that a lot of adults. All right, what did you get for number 3? Desta again. She says, I'm going to start next week. And then again, and I think I'm going to start kind of group lessons on Zoom, try it out. So she uses this chunk, I'm going to. She says it quite quickly, I'm gonna. We've covered chunking then in this section of the course. Now we're going to look at how word boundaries can cause problems for you guys. A common complaint that my students have is that they say, English is such a fast spoken language. He or she speaks so quickly, I can't understand what they're saying. Well, this is only partly true. It is a fast language, but in fact it's not the quickest. Japanese, Spanish, French, they're all quicker than English. English is still pretty quick. It's the fastest spoken language in the world. But there's something else that is going on which affects the way you understand spoken English when it's talked. And I want you to introduce you to the idea of word boundaries being part of the problem. So in written language, the way that we look at words, we see that there's a very clear division between them. Do you remember our example, salt and pepper? In spoken English, salt and pepper. Okay, the word boundaries get squashed. Would you like some coffee? Would you like some coffee? In spoken English, would you? Would you like some coffee? Would you is created into a new sound. Would you? Would you? Say it out loud to yourselves. Would you? So speech then is really this continuous stream of sounds without any boundaries between each word. Native speakers can understand each other despite this because we have prior knowledge of the vocabulary. So we can make guesses, we can predict what's being said. But you, the language learner, has to identify where these boundaries exist between the words. So let's look at some examples of these. You're going to listen to these examples and write down what you hear.
My sister's got a terrible teacher. She doesn't teach her anything. My sister's got a terrible teacher. She doesn't teach her anything. I went to assist a passenger. I went to assist a passenger. The standard the hotel achieves. The standard the hotel achieves.
So let's look at example number 1. My sister's got a terrible teacher. She doesn't teach her anything. Written down, you can see that the words are different. Teacher, teach her. But when you say them, the sounds are pretty similar, if not identical, in fact. But from context, you can work out that there is a teach her, okay, used as the verb, and teacher, my teacher, used as the noun here. Example number 2 was perhaps a bit more complicated. Did anybody write sister? I went to assist a passenger. Did anybody write sister instead of assist her? This is because I went to assist a. The is, or the a written down, is pronounced as a sound, a schwa sound in English, rather than I went to assist a passenger. In spoken English, I went to assist a passenger. So the word boundaries become problematic there. Likewise in number 3, the standard the hotel achieves. Did anybody write stand at the hotel, perhaps? The standard the hotel achieves. Here you have word boundary issues really between the standard the hotel achieves, standard the hotel, standard, okay? So raising our awareness of word boundaries can really help you understand native speakers better. So we're going to try an exercise now to help you better identify these word boundaries. You're going to listen to 10 sentences and I want you to identify how many words are there in each sentence. Just how many words there are in each sentence.
What have you been up to recently? What have you been up to recently?
I went to the library to study. I went to the library to study.
I saw Phil when he was shopping. I saw Phil when he was shopping.
What did you get up to at the weekend? What did you get up to at the weekend?
I've been to Italy twice. I've been to Italy twice.
What are you doing this evening? What are you doing this evening?
Do you fancy meeting up for a coffee? Do you fancy meeting up for a coffee?
I'm going to have an ice cream. I'm going to have an ice cream.
If I knew it was raining, I would have brought an umbrella. If I knew it was raining, I would have brought an umbrella.
Would you mind closing the window? Would you mind closing the window? Okay, hopefully you found those exercises useful in identifying where these word boundaries lie in English, in those 10 sentences. We're going to go now to the next video to look at contractions. But before I do that, just again worth pointing out that if you found that difficult, if you struggled in any way, just go back, listen to the video again, watch the video again, and listen really carefully to those sentences and how those words behave, how the sounds behave when they're mushed together and said in a normal, fast English speech. As we've said, words appear in a reduced form when they are used in spoken English. And this is because we economize on effort when we're speaking. We don't want to have to say things the long way round when the shorter way round is possible. And this is why we say, for example, I'll instead of I will, or I am instead of I am, I'm. I have becomes I've. While this is a spoken English skill, it also affects your listening, because if, for example, I say, I've lived in the UK for 10 years, and you don't understand that to mean that I still live in the UK, that might mean that you've missed the contracted form and you understood I lived in the UK sometime in the past. So these contracted forms are important in understanding how people talk in English. Now listen to these common contractions as I say them and write down what you hear. I'm going to repeat each one twice. I don't know. I don't know. I must have. I must have. I could have. I could have. I should have. I should have. I'm going to. I'm going to. I mustn't. I mustn't. I might have. I might have. Okay, how many of those did you get right? Were they difficult? Let's have a look. So it's worth pointing out that sometimes you will hear the longer form, the non-contracted form, especially in formal English like BBC News or in a school, you know, in a university or college, you'll hear the longer form, you'll hear the could have, should have, rather than could have and should have. Also, if you want to give emphasis, okay, you will hear, hey, did Carlos leave the keys on the table? He might have. I'm not sure, but it's possible. He might have. Generally though, 90% of the time I'd say, you're going to hear the messier, faster, connected speech version. So the should have, I could have, I'm not sure, I could have done, I might have done, I should have done, I'm gonna. Okay? Now let's look at some examples from real Londoners as they speak English, and you have to check, you have to guess which of the contracted forms they are using. Okay? You're going to hear each version twice. You ready?
She must have taken the train. She must have taken the train.
Did you get that one? She must have taken the train becomes she must have. Gets contracted to must have. Okay, you're going to hear that a lot more than you will hear she must have. Try pronouncing that, try saying that out loud now for a few seconds. Must have, she must have, I must have, I must have, she must have. Let's go on to the next one.
I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to do it this time.
Did you pick up that one? That one's going to becomes gonna. Okay, so it gets contracted even more, in fact, from I am going to, in its written form, to I'm gonna. Okay, so I am going to becomes I'm going to, and then in spoken English, I'm gonna. That's what you're going to hear out there. I'm going to do it next time. I'm going to do it next time. Let's go on to the next one.
You could have bought me a cheaper one. You could have bought me a cheaper one.
Okay, did you pick up that one? You could have bought me a cheaper one. You could have. Could have. Flattened to could have. Yeah? Now the next one is going to be tricky, so I'm going to give you two different examples of it. Listen really carefully and try to work out what the contraction is here. Okay, ready?
She might have left a message. She might have left a message.
Ooh, that was a tricky one. She might have left a message. She might have. Might have. Just gets reduced, flattened into she might have. She might have. She might have left a message. Okay, that was a particularly hard one because they said it very quickly. Okay, let's go to the next one.
I should have known better. I should have known better.
Did you get that one? I should have gets shortened, contracted to should have. I should have. Okay, next one.
I don't know where I put my keys. I don't know where I put my keys.
Very common, this one. I don't know gets flattened or contracted to I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I put my keys. Okay? Unless you're emphasizing that you don't know, in which case you'd say, I don't know. Okay? You would say the full or I do not know. But much more common, I don't know. Say it out loud to yourself. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Okay? And moving on to the last example.
That's why in your listening exams you mustn't listen word by word. That's why in your listening exams you mustn't listen word by word.
Did you pick up that one? That was a tricky one, maybe. You mustn't. You must not. You mustn't. Okay? Must not. Shortened into mustn't. You mustn't listen word by word. So you've done that exercise. Let's try another exercise where I'm going to tell you the contracted forms and I want you to work out the non-contracted forms. Okay? I'm going to give you 10 sentences again. You ready? Okay, example number 1. Did you do it? Did you do it? Can you hear how did you do it becomes did ya? It's a new sound when it's spoken. Did you? Did ya? Say it out loud to yourselves. Did ya? Did you do it? Example number 2. I should have done it. I should have done it. See how here I should have squashed, flattened, reduced into shoulda. I should have done it. I didn't do it. I should have done it. Should have done that homework. Should have done that English work. Okay, say that sentence out to yourself. I should have done that homework. I didn't. I should have, but I didn't. Okay, number 3. I have to go. Oh, is that the time? I have to go. Have to go. Okay, have to go. Sounds a bit sort of Siri or like I have to go. Sounds very robotic. But if you say just normally, I have to becomes flattened into have to in spoken English. Example number 4. Would you do it? Would you do it? Would you do this favour for me? Would you? Would you comes shortened, contracted into would you. Again, a bit like the second one. The first one, did you do it? Did you? Did you? This one, would you? Would you? Would you? Example number 5, very common one. I don't know. What are you doing tonight, Mike? I don't know. Yeah? I don't know. Everyday English, spoken English, I don't know. Okay. Example number 6. Give me some time. Give me some time. Did you get that one? Give me gets contracted into gimme. Okay. Again, say this out loud to yourselves now. Hey, give me some time while I think about this. Gimme. Again, important to point out that sometimes you're going to hear the give me, right? But a lot of the time you're going to hear the short and contracted form. Gimme. Just give me 2 minutes. I need to look at my watch. I'm not sure what time the bus is coming. Give me a second. Gimme. Gimme. Okay, give me some time. Give me some money. Give me some attention. Give me some love. Okay. Next example. What you doing? What you doing? What you doing tonight? Okay. What are you doing? Contracted form, whatcha. That's how you would hear it in spoken English a lot of the time. What you doing? Another example. I kind of like it. I kind of like it. I kind of like it. I don't know, you're trying out flamenco for the first time, flamenco dancing, and you're not sure about it, but you think you like it. I kind of like it. I kind of like it. Example number 9. Tell them to do it. Tell them to do it. Here we've got tell them gets contracted to tell them. Okay, the just gets squashed, flattened, and what you hear is tell them. Just tell them to do it tomorrow. They don't need to do it today. Tell them to do it tomorrow. One more example. I kind of want to go soon. I kind of want to go soon. I kind of want to. I kind of wanna. Okay, so we've looked at some examples of contractions. We've done some practice exercises. Just worth always having in your mind that this is what happens in any language, okay? It happened to me in Spanish. When I went to Spain for the first time, I had learnt Spanish at school, but I was really shocked when I first landed in Spain and there were these contracted forms all of the time being used in spoken Spanish. They didn't pronounce every single word like it is written down or like I'd learnt it in a classroom. So know that you're not alone. This is happening in every single language. Now, we've looked at contractions. We've looked at these ways that words reduce and are flattened and squashed. Now let's look at weak forms of language. Okay, so if you're ready, let's go to the next episode and look at these weaker forms. Okay? How do you say these words? I'm guessing that you used the strong forms and said for, to, do, are, you. Well, that would be true for about 10% of the time in spoken English. Like, a good job is what I'm looking for. Or, are they playing my favorite song? Yes, they are. But most of the time, we actually pronounce the weak forms of the words. And this is what you hear when you hear native speakers talk. So the weak form is the standard and the strong form is the exception. So you're going to hear a lot more things like, I'm looking for a job, right? We don't say, I'm looking for a job. We say, I'm looking for a job. Or, are you okay? Much more common than, are you okay? Are you okay? Or, I've got this gift. It's for you. It's for you. Rather than the strong form, it's for you. So we only use the strong form of the word if you want to stress it or if you want to put it at the end of the sentence. For example, do you like pizza? Yes, I do. Okay, first is the weaker form. Do you like pizza? Yes, I do. Or, can you help me? Yes, I can. Can you help me? Yes, I can. Can you hear the emphasis is on the second bit, the stronger form? Weak forms are often harder to hear because they are not stressed in a sentence, they are shorter, they are pronounced quickly, and some sounds completely disappear. And often the weak forms are auxiliary verbs, so has, am, is, are, does, do, and so on. Now, if you look at these sentences, you've got your full form and your weak form, and more often we say them in the weak form. So, am I speaking to customer services? That's the strong form, am I? It's much more common to hear Am I speaking to customer services? Am I? Rather than the stronger form, am. Okay? So in the second one, instead of is he going to Paris, you'll hear is. Is he going to Paris? Strong form, is he going to Paris? Weaker form, is he going to Paris? Okay. Are you coming? Most of the time you're going to hear, are you coming? Are gets weakened to Say it out loud to yourselves. Are, am, is, z. Okay. Likewise, do they live here is often said d. Do they live here? Do they live here? Okay. Does this make sense? What I'm saying now, does this make sense? Much more common than does this make sense? Unless I'm really wanting to emphasize and stress something, I would normally use the weaker form, does. Have you ever swam in a lake? Often you're going to hear the weaker form, have. Have, weaker form, have, strong form, weaker form, have. Have you ever swam in a lake? Have you ever? Has she seen the new film? Has. Has gets weakened to has in everyday speech. And so had they told Monica is the strong form, and so had they told Monica? Had. Had gets weakened to had sound. Sometimes you don't hear these unstressed function words, and this can cause confusion. So let's try a practice exercise where you are going to listen out for them. I'm going to read 5 sentences out loud, and I want you to try to listen for the unstressed function word in each sentence. Are you going to watch that film? Are you going to watch that film? This present is for you. This present is for you. Can you pass me the salt? Can you pass me the salt? What does she do for work? What does she do for work? So had she told you about it? So had she told you about it? So to check the answers of that, you'll need to go to the PDF on this section, and there you'll see which of the unstressed function words I used in each sentence. That's the end of this section. Now let's move to my tips for improving your listening skills. So now I'm going to give you 8 tips to improve your listening. The first tip, get smart about listening. Just by doing more listening is not necessarily going to make you better at it. You need to be clever and smart about the way you listen. So in other words, you're going to need to do intensive listening. That's the slightly geeky, getting into the way the sounds work in spoken English as opposed to written English, and really doing those micro listening tasks like we've done in this course, knowing how those sounds work together when they're next to each other, as well as the extensive listening practice. So that's listening to movies, listening to films, listening to conversations. The 2 types of listening are going to be very important. You need to do both, intensive and extensive. Second tip, top-down processing, or using what you already know. So sometimes you don't have to understand every word to understand what people mean. Sound weird? Let's take an example. Imagine you're in a supermarket and you're looking for tomatoes, and the shop assistant tells you, if you go to the end of this aisle, turn right, and there's the fruit and veg section. Now, you may not know 2 of the words in that sentence, in those instructions. You might not know the word aisle, and you might not know the word veg. But take a moment and think of the context where this conversation is taking place and what you want. You want those tomatoes. Chances are you can deduct, you can figure out that aisle refers to the place in between the shelves, okay, the walkway, and that veg is a shortened form of vegetables. So often we make predictions about what the speaker is saying based on the context, based on the situation of where the conversation is taking place. So using these cues and the way that language takes place will help you. Thinking about the possible content of what is going to be said is an important part of learning any language. And often there are visual cues you can pick up before any word is spoken. So think of that shop again. And this time you're at the cashier, you've bought some clothes, for example, and you want to pay by credit card. But the shop assistant or the cashier is shaking their head apologetically and saying something. Now, even if you don't catch what they say, you don't understand them, chances are they're saying that you can't pay by credit card because their credit card machine isn't working or whatever. But you use the situation that you're in to make sense of what that person is saying. And it's predicting, making these predictions that happen in all the time in everyday spoken language. And your ability to predict and use the situation to think of the meaning will be really helpful for you. Now, to get better at this, you can look at any YouTube video and just watch a bit of the video and pause it and think, what might happen next? What might you hear next? Make these predictions, play with the videos, because using your knowledge of the way the world works will help you in predicting what the speaker is going to say next. Tip number 3, listen to as many different kinds of English as possible. What I mean by this is listen to different accents, ages, male, female voices, and different kinds of English, so formal English and informal English. By doing this, you're going to understand more kinds, more varieties of English. Because if you listen just to one podcast or your teacher, you're only going to understand that person, right? So you need to make sure you can listen to young people speaking, old people speaking, people from Scotland, people from Yorkshire, people from London. This way, you're going to expose yourself to all of the different kinds of English there are in Britain, and that way you're going to get better at understanding native speakers. Tip number 4, listen to things that you understand between 60 to 80% of. For practice, I mean, if you want to watch a film or listen to music and you're not really bothered about learning English, then sure. But if you really want to treat it as a way of getting better at English, if you understand 100%, you're not going to learn anything. But if you learn something between 60 and 80, you're in a good space. Anything less than that, if you understand 20%, 30%, you're going to become demotivated, you're going to give up too easily. That's what we humans do. If anything's too hard, we'll just go and we'll forget about that. We'll go and do something else. So it's important between 60 to 80% of the content is comprehensible, that you understand it. So that's tip number 4. Tip number 5, relax. You've probably heard this many times before and probably felt it yourself, that speaking in a foreign language can be stressful, okay? But there is something that you always have with you, and that is your breathing. And this is really a tip for life, okay? Because the more you can be in control of your breath, the more relaxed you're going to be and the more clarity of mind you're going to have. So breathe longer, breathe deeper, be more in tune with your breath will help you perceive language better. It'll help you recognize sounds and words better. So the other thing about being relaxed is try not to translate every word in your head. Okay, this is what I did with my Spanish at the beginning. I was so concentrating on what the person was saying that I'd be like translating every single word as they said it in my head. But what I realized quickly was that it doesn't work. You have to just let go of that control and try to just get the general meaning of what's being said. Related to that as well is this idea of not preparing your answer while they are speaking. So not thinking in your head, what's the perfect response to what they're saying? Rather, just listen to the person, not translating every word then in your head, and just relax. Going with the flow is one of the most important tips in this how to improve your listening generally. Tip 6, turn off the subtitles. Subtitles are not your friend when it comes to listening, that is. So subtitles are great when you're a beginner and you have no knowledge of the language at all. Subtitles are there to help you. But the more confident you get in your language, the more you need to trust your listening skills to understand what's going on. The problem with subtitles is that you focus 100% on the reading. You lose everything else. You lose what's going on with body language, with gesture, with basically with the listening, okay? Because your attention, your brain is totally focused on your reading. Okay, fine, but what if I don't understand everything, Mike, people say to me. Fine, there will be bits you don't understand. And two things for that. One is it gets easier, like anything. The more practice you do, the easier it becomes. So first few weeks of no subtitles, it's going to be difficult, but it will get easier. Two, if you don't understand something, use the rewind function. Okay, on YouTube or Netflix, you have a rewind function. You can just press rewind, go back to the bit you didn't understand and look at the subtitles and see, does that match up with what I understood? In summary, Netflix, Amazon, wherever you get wherever you watch your shows, turn off those subtitles. Just try it for a couple of weeks. See how you get on. Tip 7. Speed up and slow down the audio. This is another one for the Netflix shows or the YouTube videos that you watch. And actually on Udemy, you can do this as well. If you speed up the audio, you're going to understand less. But what happens is that you'll understand better the word boundaries and how basically the sounds are happening in the language. You'll be able to pick out those different sounds, the beginnings of words and the ends of words. And so what happens is when you go back to normal speed, your understanding is like, oh, this is a lot easier than I thought. So it's a really good tip. Speed it up, then go back to normal speed. Likewise, if you don't understand, you're struggling to understand, slow it down. So by slowing it down, things are going to be a lot easier, and then gradually you'll get more confidence, and going back and putting it at normal speed will help you as well. Slowing down, speeding up audio, it's something that has helped me in my learning of Polish and Arabic. I do that quite a lot. So go and try it out. Tip number 8, and the final tip. Have an imaginary friend. All right, this one might sound a bit weird, but bear with me. Imagine you go out in public and you have your phone with you. Maybe you're going to meet some native speakers. If you have a conversation with this person who doesn't exist, what you're doing is practicing your language skills, because you have these thoughts in your head and then you are practicing your listening to them and then speaking back to the person. And what this does is it warms up your language, okay, your English language, in a way that's not threatening. You're not making any mistakes. Nothing embarrassing is happening. And you will be nicely warmed up for the conversation that you're going to have. I do this in other languages and it really works. It sounds weird, but it does actually work. So the imaginary friend is a good one. Just a word of warning. If you are going to do this and you've got a phone, make sure the phone is on silent or on flight mode, because if it rings, it kind of gets a little bit awkward. Okay, so those are my 8 tips to improve your language learning, listening skills even. If you have any suggestions of your own to help other people with their listening tips, please do leave a comment in the comments section. In this exercise, listen to these informal British English nouns and adjectives and match the word that you hear to the pictures that you see. You'll see the answers revealed after the last example. Good luck.
Mate. Mate. Hey mate, nice to see you. Hey mate, nice to see you. The loo. The loo. Can I go to the loo, please? Can I go to the loo, please? A cuppa. A cuppa. Do you want to come into mine for a cuppa? Do you want to come to mine for a cuppa? A bloke. A bloke. There's a bloke who lives on my street with the same name as me. There's a bloke who lives on my street with the same name as me. A fiver. A fiver. Can you lend me a fiver, John? I want to buy something from the shops. Can you lend me a fiver, John? I want to buy something from the shops. Banter. Banter. I like people with a bit of banter. I think I have a good sense of humour. I like people with a bit of banter. I think I have a good sense of humour. A fag. A fag. I gave up the fags a long time ago. I knew it was bad for my health. I gave up the fags a long time ago. I knew it was bad for my health. Fluke. Fluke. Passing the exam was a real fluke, since I did no revision at all. Passing the exam was a real fluke, since I did no revision at all. Broke. Broke. Now I've paid for the rent and lent John some money. I'm broke this month. Now I've paid for the rent and lent John some money. I'm broke this month. Gutted. Gutted. I was gutted not to see you last night at the party. I hope you're well. I was gutted not to see you last night at the party. I hope you're well. Knackered. Knackered. I'm working really hard and also going to bed late, so I'm knackered most of the time. I'm working really hard and also going to bed late, so I'm knackered most of the time. Peckish. Peckish. I haven't eaten since breakfast. I'm getting a bit peckish. I haven't eaten since breakfast. I'm getting a bit peckish. Dodgy. Dodgy. Shoreditch used to be a dodgy area of London in the 90s. Now it's very hipster. Shoreditch used to be a dodgy area of London in the 90s. Now it's very hipster. Chuffed. Chuffed. My sister's found a really nice boyfriend. I'm really chuffed for her. My sister's found a really nice boyfriend. I'm really chuffed for her.
Hey mate, nice to see you. Hey mate, nice to see you. Can I go to the loo, please? Can I go to the loo, please? Do you want to come to mine for a cuppa? Do you want to come to mine for a cuppa? There's a bloke who lives in my street with the same name as me. There's a bloke who lives in my street with the same name as me. Can you lend me a fiver, John? I want to buy something from the shops. Can you lend me a fiver, John? I want to buy something from the shops. I like people with a bit of banter. I think I have a good sense of humour. I like people with a bit of banter. I think I have a good sense of humour. I gave up the fags a long time ago. I knew it was bad for my health. I gave up the fags a long time ago. I knew it was bad for my health. Passing the exam was a real fluke since I did no revision at all. Passing the exam was a real fluke since I did no revision at all.
Now I've paid for the rent and lent John some money. I'm broke this month. Now I've paid for the rent and lent John some money. I'm broke this month. I was gutted not to see you last night at the party. I hope you're well. I was gutted not to see you last night at the party. I hope you're well. I'm working really hard and also going to bed late, so I'm knackered most of the time. I'm working really hard and also going to bed late, so I'm knackered most of the time. I haven't eaten since breakfast. I'm getting a bit peckish. I haven't eaten since breakfast. I'm getting a bit peckish. Shoreditch used to be a dodgy area of London in the 90s. Now it's very hipster. Shoreditch used to be a dodgy area of London in the 90s. Now it's very hipster. My sister's found a really nice boyfriend. I'm really chuffed for her. My sister's found a really nice boyfriend. I'm really chuffed for her.
Okay, here is the bonus material of the course. You're going to get a couple of exercises now where you can practice some more of your listening skills. And in this one, this is going to be a dictation exercise. I'm going to dictate some phrases that speakers of English use when they are speaking. And you need to just write down what you hear. Try to focus on the spelling. You're going to hear each phrase repeated twice, and then the answers will appear at the end. Good luck.
She has to go to work early tomorrow. She has to go to work early tomorrow. Have you seen him? Have you seen him? I don't know how to open this. I don't know how to open this. I bet he's got loads of money. I bet he's got loads of money. Could you give me a hand? Could you give me a hand? It's kinda selfish of her. It's kinda selfish of her. I suppose it's a long journey. I suppose it's a long journey. I have to work the weekends because I need the money. I have to work the weekends because I need the money. Perhaps it's not worth doing. Perhaps it's not worth doing. They are open every day except Sunday. They are open every day except Sunday.
Can you hear how in each of the sentences something is reduced, weakened when it's spoken from the way that it's written down? Let's listen again.
She has to go to work early tomorrow. She has to go to work early tomorrow. Have you seen him? Have you seen him? I don't know how to open this. I don't know how to open this. I bet he's got loads of money. I bet he's got loads of money. Could you give me a hand? Could you give me a hand? It's kinda selfish of her. It's kinda selfish of her. I suppose it's a long journey. I suppose it's a long journey. I have to work the weekends because I need the money. I have to work the weekends because I need the money. Perhaps it's not worth doing. Perhaps it's not worth doing. They are open every day except Sunday. They are open every day except Sunday.